Hello and welcome back to the AI Ethics Now podcast. My name is Tom Ritchie, and today I'm delighted to be joined by two guests from the Harmony Project.
Mariana Oja
is a research associate in the School of Arts, Culture and Environment at the University of Gloucestershire, specialising in ecolinguistics and environmental discourse.
And joining her is Jorge Vallejo,
the project lead and data and AI engineering consultant for Harmony. Together, they're working to apply ecolinguistics to large language models and address the ecological implications of AI-generated narratives. Mariana and Jorge, hello.
Hi, Tom.
Hello, Tom.
How are you both doing?
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Can I ask you both, what brings you to this conversation on AI ethics, please?
I come to AI ethics from a very technical route, actually. My background is software engineering, and I've worked in information technology for about 40 years, which is quite a lot. Last decade or so, I've been focused mainly on data engineering, data science, machine learning, and AI. So when I started working with machine learning, something really struck me. We're no longer programming machine in a deterministic way. So we don't tell them exactly what to do in each step, what the machine are actually learning from patterns in data. So that's very powerful, but also raises some ethical questions. So that was my first concern. I also, in parallel, always been worried about ecological crises, and I have some formal training in ecology as well as in engineering. So I was already thinking about environmental ethics. But when I studied ecolinguistics a few years ago, that really was a turning point, because it made me realize how deeply language shapes our views and actions towards the environment. So the conclusion was clear. If large language models are not carefully guided, they will amplify the destructive narrative of today. So this is also an opportunity, because we can change those narratives. And that's really the goal of the Harmony project now.
My connection with AI ethics is from the intersection of language and ecology. My background is in linguistics and environmental humanities, and for the past 8 years, I have been exploring the role of language in a variety of contexts from an ecolinguistics perspective, including religion, and more recently in AI with the Harmony Project. One of my concerns when it comes to AI and the environment, particularly, is that a lot has been said about the harmful impact of AI on the environment regarding its carbon footprint. But little is known, or at least little is said yet, about the impact of the embedded narratives and the cultural and linguistic bias that large language models share and reinforce when it comes to environmental issues. Large language models are typically optimized for profit, not for environmental ethics. So AI-generated marketing can easily give priority to convenience over sustainability. And so incorporating the environmental ethical dimension to these conversations is essential.
Yeah, thank you both. It's really interesting to hear how you came to this point. And I wonder if I could ask, how did the Harmony Project come about initially? Was there a specific moment or conversation that sparked the collaboration?
The start of this project was actually after I studied ecolinguistics. As part of the course, we have to do some work at the end. And in this work, I expressed my concerns about the problems that AI will bring, that repeating the old narratives about environment specifically. And the professors Aaron Stevie, who actually delivers the course, came back to me and said he really appreciated what I said, and if I could write something about it. So I wrote a paper, and then after that, that paper was basically showing what the problem was. But after that, we talked again with Aaron, and we said, okay, let's do something about it. Can we change those narratives? And that was really the start of the Harmony project. And this was in September 2023. In October 2023, we were selected by an event on High Phase to present our project, and that's probably the official kickoff of the project.
Thank you so much, and it's really useful context for the listeners. I wonder, Mariana, the Harmony Project itself applies ecolinguistics to large language models. So for listeners perhaps who are unfamiliar with the idea of ecolinguistics, would you mind explaining what that is and why it matters for AI, please?
Sure. So ecolinguistics looks at the role of language in relation to broader systems that life depends on. So that means looking at the interactions between human beings, non-human beings, and their physical environment. And to analyze these interactions, ecolinguistics draws on cognitive linguistics, discourse analysis, appraisal theory, and other frameworks to help us reveal how language is used to communicate narratives that further reinforce and shape our cultural relationships with the natural world. And the problem with generative AI is that it produces language at a large scale, right? So we're talking about 100 billion words a day or so. And with that comes the risk of amplifying unsustainable narratives that already appear in the training data. So the question is, how do we decide when a narrative is ecologically oriented and when it is not? We do this by establishing an ecosophy. So that is a set of principles and ecological values that guides our interpretation and language generation. It is an ethical lens and functions as a benchmark for deciding ecologically responsible language use. So, by aligning AI with a set of ecological principles and doing this ecolinguistic training, then AI can become a tool for change. In a nutshell, so coming back to the question of why ecolinguistics is important for AI, I think there are two main reasons. First, it is important for AI to have that ecological awareness, but it's also important for AI to promote ecological awareness. And this is at the core of the Harmony project.
That's great. And I think it's a conversation we've had a lot on this podcast. It's one I have a lot with my students, is the ecological challenges that come with using AI systems. And we have so many discussions about questions of ethics and bias, but one of the things that always comes up from students is this impact on the environment as well, and the challenges that come with these large language models that we all read how much power they draw and the impact that they have on water supply and everything else. So it sounds really great what you're trying to do with the Harmony project. You mentioned, though, that LLMs have embedded narratives with ecological implications, and I wonder if you could provide us with some concrete examples of how these narratives are showing up in AI outputs, please.
Yeah, so the trouble with AI is that when you prompt a model explicitly about an ecological problem, the response will be adequate and well adjusted generally. But when prompted with issues that are not directly related to environmental issues, AI models often fail to recognize that dimension. An example that we usually give is when we prompted Copilot to tell us about Coca-Cola Classic. The response was along the lines of, it is a flagship soft drink of the Coca-Cola company, celebrated for its formula and so on and so forth. And then it finished by saying, well, it's a cultural icon as well. But then when once prompted about this glowing language that it is being used for such a harmful product, Copilot highlights Coca-Cola's problematic legacy with health problems, environmental damage, and greenwashing. And we also prompted Copilot to tell us about patio heaters. And again, the response was also an enthusiastic one. Patio heaters are a brilliant way to extend your enjoyment well into the cooler evenings, etc. It gives you a cozy atmosphere. Again, it overlooks the environmental cost. And so this is what we aim to address with the Harmony project. Try to reveal those narratives that are not so explicit, that are underlying the language that we use. So to counteract this, we developed Theophrastus, which is our open source assistant built on ChatGPT. And it is instructed to act as a professor of linguistics with ecolinguistics knowledge. So the idea is to provide more complete responses that are ecologically aligned to our ecosophy, the ecosophy that we use in the project.
That sounds great, and it'd be great to hear more about Theophrastus later on. I wonder, though, just to follow up on that, are these embedded narratives consistent across different LLMs, or have you seen that different models reflect different environmental perspectives?
Yes, in general, this is across any model, really any of the mainstream models, and we have tested many of them, all of the mainstream ones, and even open source ones as well. None of them have really an ecosophy behind how they are built, and that is apparent when you prompt them. One of our ways of evaluating our model is by having a set of prompts that we run across different models and then compare to the ones we just train and see the differences. But yeah, even if they have some variations between models and one could be a bit better aligned than others, they all are well behind what we would expect in terms of environmental ethics.
Yeah, I think, and that's something that, again, we speak to students about. And we've had students say to us that they would love the idea if AI could have almost like those heat graphs that you get on houses in the UK when you purchase them, of like you're an E, but you could be an A, to actually understand where the kind of the ecological value set of that LLM is. In the Harmony project, you've mentioned about the ecosophy, so this idea of a framework of ecological values and how you use this to guide language generation. Jorge, could you explain perhaps a little bit more how you translate ecological values into something that an AI system can actually work with?
Before going exactly how we do it, we may need to bring some technical terms. One is a word embedding, and that when we say embedding narratives, it is quite literally embedded narratives in AI. The word embedding can be imagined as a space with thousands of dimensions instead of 3 as the one we can imagine, but there are 1,000 of dimensions on this space. So when you train a model, what it basically does is mapping every single word that was found during the training to this space. Each word will have a specific coordinate in this space. So the idea of this is that words that are normally together in the discourse and the narratives, they will be together in that word embedding as well. So prompt a model, what it really does is it goes based also on the context you have given to the model. What it really does is go into this embedding and pick the most probable word, and that will be the one that is closest to all of these words that are used as a context. So, and the Coca-Cola example is a very clear one, because originally the model goes for the normal narrative. Coca-Cola is great, is an icon. When we challenge that, it will say, well, actually, that's is not really true. Coca-Cola actually has another issues. There are in environmental problems, there are health issues. But the model still, if not challenged, will go for the dominant narrative. And that dominant narrative was learned during training because it's where they have more words or more narratives about in that case. So what we need to do in those cases is move that embedding, is alter that embedding in such a way that the words move to a different narrative. So the words that are closer together will be in another part of that space. And then instead of associate something beneficial with economically beneficial or financially beneficial, it will associate something beneficial to environmental or planetary well-being. So that's the main work we do. And for that, we use some known techniques in AI, which is fine-tuning, supervised reinforcement learning, and system instruction. And what we do with the ecosophy is trying to, across all those stages of training, be consistent to the ecosophy. So that's the way we can say, well, this improved or didn't when we train. If it was in one place and now the prompts bring us closer to our ecosophy, the answers will be closer to our ecosophy. That means the model was trained correctly. So that's where ecosophy really is central to our project, because we need definitely a framework to not only train but also evaluate the models and see if the training was successful.
What does an ecosophy look like in practice? Is it a set of principles? Is it a scoring system? Or is it something else?
Yes, well, that is both. For example, an ecosophy is a set of principles, but also there are priority of values. So we have different levels of priorities within that ecosophy. And also it's a scoring system. We transform that into a scoring system for the evaluation. But for the ecosophy itself, in our Harmony website, for example, it can be seen there. We have a specific page showing our ecosophy. What we really do is translate that ecosophy into system instructions and into evaluation scoring system.
And from a technical side, would you be able to walk us through how you've implemented this kind of fine-tuning, reinforcement learning, and ecosophy-informed set of system instructions, and maybe share what the key challenges were there as well?
Yes, of course. The stages normally in fine-tuning a model, because we need to be clear that we always need to use a base model that was originally trained, what is called a pre-trained model. And then from there, the stages are fine-tuning it or supervised fine-tuning, in which what you need to do is apply a data set. That data set you can imagine and in practice is a spreadsheet where you have prompts and answers. And those are the answers you would like the model to learn to the prompts we are giving. If you have something, 1,000 of those, what would happen is that the model will start learning what you wanted to answer. That's normally what you do in the first place. Then the most important part of tuning in terms of ethics, especially, is the reinforcement learning, because in this case, it's again a data set that you use to do this reinforcement learning. But in this case, instead of giving the actual answer to each prompt, we have 1,000 of prompts and 2 answers. One is better than the other, and we flag which one is better. So we are not guiding the model, we are not imposing an answer to those prompts. We are giving a preference, and that is what they are also called preference data sets. So those 2 steps of training are based on data set, and that's where the challenge is, creating those data sets, doing all the curation. We've done that with our advisors and with the International Ecolinguistics Association. The members of the International Ecolinguistics Association have helped us to create those prompts and answers, and then double check that they actually follow our ecosophy, and then those 2 steps of training. Once the model is trained, one thing you can do as well is put in what is called a system prompt or system instruction that will be part of every prompt you run. When you run a prompt, you write a prompt to the model. What it will happen is that it will go to the backend model, not just your prompt, but also a whole context that it has that is called the system prompt. So that context is normally given by the company or whoever was the developer of the model. But what we do in this case is that system prompt we mainly created as our ecosophy. So it's our ecosophy in form of system prompt. So that has a very important bearing on the answer the model will give you, because it's like every time you are asking something, it will first read all this ecosophy, all ecosophy of ours, and then add that particular prompt. So that definitely moves around the embedding as well, because the words you are using have a completely different effect. And that's mainly what happens with Theophrastus when asked the same questions about Coca-Cola or patio heater. It's first reading all our ecosophy, so it has a lot more context to answer that.
Mariana, you mentioned that the project also addresses cultural bias around environmental issues. How does ecolinguistics help identify and reduce that bias? And does it vary significantly across cultures?
I mean, we work with language, so language is vital for the transmission of ecological knowledge and particularly local ecological knowledge. So the problem is that AI models are predominantly trained and evaluated using data in English. And that also comes the risk of amplifying greater cultural and linguistic imbalances and biases. So, language representation for us is very important because having that underrepresentation in AI contributes to perpetuating the loss of systems and values and also traditions and frameworks that are so important for different cultures across the world. So, in the Harmony Project, we think that by introducing other languages, we'll be able to produce outputs that are culturally and ecologically grounded, but also to ensure that the ecological and ethical dimension is well represented. I think this is at the core of our project, trying to incorporate linguistic and cultural wisdom from across the world, and this is done through language training, multilingual training. And of course, well, we're still in the process of developing this aspect because again, this is quite time consuming. We need speakers of different languages to help us evaluate the different models and check whether the ecosophies also are aligned and according to the linguistic element. So this is something that we are hoping we can expand in the future.
And I wonder, how do you avoid just simply replacing one cultural bias with perhaps another when implementing these ecosophical values, when going between languages?
Well, I think this is where it comes that we always talk about our ecosophy as a living ecosophy, and it's all not only because it uses the word living, but also because it's on a live document on our website, so which we continue to update. So as you can see, this is not static and it's not comprehensive. It's just a representation of what it can look like to have a more ecologically fair, just society. This is why conversations are important, so that then we don't misalign or misrepresent or misinterpret one culture or or linguistic elements associated with the culture and the traditions. We're trying to engage in those conversations with people. Particularly, we have a wonderful network, which is, or Jorge already mentioned, which is the International Ecolinguistics Association, which is comprised of over 1,500 researchers across the world and who also speak different languages. So we are thankfully very well connected in that aspect, connected in the aspect of engaging with people around the world that can give us a hand to enhance the model responses and not to make the same mistakes that large language models often make.
What does success look like for the Harmony project in the next few years?
Our main measure of success is, first of all, we need to make sure that this is possible, that when we train our model with an ecosophy, the model actually turns around. But that is the success from the technical point of view. But from a human point of view, the successes will be when other major players in AI actually are also transparent with these ecosophies or whatever they want to call it, but they need to do something about the ethical AI in terms of languages, the environmental ethics, because when they talk about environmental ethics, it's normally, as Mariana said, about the carbon footprint and how they are reducing that, but they are not talking about actually what their models are saying, what's the stance of their models in environmental ethics. So the first thing, or the most important things for us, is that kind of transparency is one day there for every single model around, in the same way that is being done at the moment with more anthropocentric biases like gender biases or racial biases. They are quite working quite well with that and improving, but they are not doing enough on environmental ethics. Our project, in a modest way, is trying to lead the way for that, and we prove we have models that are actually much better in terms of environmental ethics than the main models. So we want to show the way, really. That's the thing for us as the goal of the project.
Yeah, thank you. And I wonder, last question, what steps do you think we can take to ensure a positive future with AI, please?
We need more conversations with other areas as well. It's just not AI development, but incorporate the humanities broadly. So not just the environmental humanities, but philosophy, linguistics, the social sciences. It's very important for developing the ethical element, making sure that it's incorporated and that it's taken on seriously, because there's a bigger risk, not just that those narratives are being perpetrated in the linguistic and cultural bias, but also the fact that there can be some agency happening from that. And thinking about as well the possibilities that there are for training for people to understand how these tools work. So there's a lot of work there as well, not just in the development of the ethical dimension, but also the critical dimension of how it can be used. So there is a lot there that we need to unpack, I think, and this will happen, I believe, with time. But the idea, the plan has to already be in place so that then it doesn't take us by surprise. So engaging with broader dimensions and broader areas, because ultimately AI affects everything we do. So it is important to have those conversations and think about how we can move forward in a way that it's respectful, not just for human beings, but for the more than human being and for our physical environment.
Thank you both so much for that, and for really sharing a lot about the Harmony project and the concepts and ideas that sit behind it. It's been amazing to speak to you both today. And I just wanted to say, yeah, thank you so much and have a lovely rest of the day. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tom, for having us.
Thank you for having us, Tom. Bye bye.
Bye.